I lay on the hospital bed, having just undergone a coronary angiogram. My chest felt like a slab of iron had been dropped on it. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from my son Eric. "Mom, the mortgage is $1,500 this month. Don't forget to transfer it to my account before the 10th. A wave of dizziness hit me. I nearly dropped the phone. I could barely stand, and he didn't even ask how I was doing. Not a word of concern, just money as always. This son of mine, draining me dry like a damn leech. Should I even keep him in my life? I'm so done living like this." The hospital room reeked of disinfectant. I had just finished a round of tests, my body feeling like it had been hollowed out. The words on my phone screen were as cold and sharp as a scalpel. "Mom, we're just starting out and the financial pressure is insane. Could you please help us for 3 years? Just 3. We'll definitely pay you back once we're on our feet." That was the duet Eric and his wife Vanessa sang back when they were trying to win me over. They just bought that new house, $1,500 a month in mortgage payments. The original plan was simple. I'd cover them for 3 years and then they'd take over. Well, 3 turned into 5. My monthly pension is barely $2,000, and the weight of their mortgage has been suffocating me. I've burned through every last dollar I had in savings. To stay afloat, I secretly took a part-time job at a janitorial service. Mopping floors, scrubbing toilets, whatever they threw at me. And I told no one. Not a soul. I was too ashamed. What kind of son did I raise? His mother's in the hospital and he can't even bother to pick up the phone. All he cares about is reminding me to make the payment. What the hell am I doing this for? Vanessa used to be all honeyed words, laying it on thick. "Anna, you're the best mom in the world. Eric's your son. If you don't help him, who will? We'll repay you, we promise." Repay me? At this rate, I won't live long enough to see the day. My grip tightened around the phone until I nearly cracked it. My fingers went numb. A wave of nausea rolled through me. I turned my head and took deep breaths. Not long after, the door creaked open. Eric and Vanessa had finally managed to squeeze in a visit. Vanessa held a small plastic bag of apples, the kind that looked like they'd been picked out of the discount bin at a grocery store. "The parking here is outrageous," she groaned the moment she walked in. $5 for just half an hour. Eric walked up to the bed and offered a perfunctory, "Hey Mom, you feeling better?" Before I could even answer, he turned and asked, "Did you get the mortgage money ready? Don't let it be late." Vanessa jumped in, "Yeah, Anna, things are really tight for us too. Caleb's early learning program just hiked their rates." She paused and then added, "But your insurance should cover most of this, right?" Translation: Pay your own damn bills. Don't even think about asking us for help. I looked at them both and my heart just sank. Vanessa kept going, "Anna, you really need to recover quickly. We're so busy with work and Caleb needs me at home. We just can't be at the hospital all the time." Message received: "Don't expect care or company. Just get well soon so I can keep acting as their walking ATM." Eric chimed in, "Mom, Vanessa may sound tough but she means well. She really does care about you. And please don't forget the mortgage, okay? Care about me." I wasn't even out of the woods yet and she was already eyeing my insurance payout. What a son. What a daughter-in-law. Vanessa's eyes scanned the bedside table like she was searching for some hidden stash of emergency cash. And Eric? He stayed glued to his phone, scrolling nonstop, barely pretending to listen. Most people visit family in the hospital to bring warmth. They came to check if the ATM was still functional. Not long after they left, Diane showed up. Diane was the girl next door I'd helped years ago. She calls me her godmother, but truth be told, she's more family than anyone by blood. She brought a thermos filled with homemade chicken soup. "Anna, how are you feeling? What did the doctor say?" she asked gently. She poured the soup and fed it to me one spoonful at a time, then tucked the blanket around me and helped me lie back down. She even went out to the nurse's station to ask about my care instructions. When she returned, she took one look at me and knew something was off. "Anna, did Eric upset you again?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine. Really. Don't worry about me. Some things are too shameful to share." Diane sighed softly but didn't push. She's always known what Eric and Vanessa are like, but she never pried. It wasn't her place. "Anna, you have to speak up. If Eric's crossing the line, you can't keep swallowing it." I patted her hand. "Diane, I'm just getting old. My body's failing me. They're young, it's tough for them too." But inside it felt like I'd swallowed a mouthful of glass. That steaming bowl of chicken soup, compared to those limp apples and even colder words, left me with a bitter, aching mess of emotions. What a cruel twist. My own blood sees right through me while someone with no relation worries whether I've eaten. The doctor suggested I stay a few more days for observation. But the moment I thought about the hospital bill racking up thousands and Eric's cold, detached tone, I insisted on being discharged. Eric claimed he was swamped at work, and Vanessa said there was no one to watch Caleb. Neither of them had any intention of picking me up. In the end, it was Diane who took a day off from school and came to get me. The moment I stepped into the house, the kitchen was stone cold. No signs of cooking, no warmth, nothing. The whole place felt emptier than a hospital room. Not a single call from Eric or Vanessa. Not even a text to ask how I was doing. Honestly, maybe the silence was a blessing. I could take care of myself. But that hollow feeling, like a needle pricking the softest part of my chest, was hard to shake. I ran my hand along the cold surface of the counter and opened the fridge. A few wilted leaves of lettuce. That was it. A house, no matter how warm, is only as warm as the people in it. And a home with no one left is just a shell. Barely 2 days out of the hospital, my body still weak, Vanessa showed up unannounced, with Caleb in her arms. The little guy was bouncing with energy, his cheeks rosy, not a trace of illness in sight. Vanessa walked in and jumped straight to tears. "Anna, Caleb had a terrible fever a few days ago. We had to see the doctor twice. It cost us so much. Could you please lend us $500 to get by?" She dabbed at the corners of her eyes, but no actual tears fell. "The doctor said he needs the best medication. We really don't have a choice. Mom, you wouldn't just stand by and watch your own grandson suffer, would you?" I looked at Caleb's bright, healthy little face and my heart softened. He was my grandson after all. The small pension I had just received was supposed to cover the mortgage. But I clenched my teeth, pulled out $500 and handed it to her. Vanessa's face lit up the moment the money touched her fingers. She threw out a few empty thank yous and rushed out with Caleb. Didn't even stay long enough for a glass of water. That look of satisfaction when she pocketed the money, I saw it clear as day. And still I swallowed it. That was my only income for the month. Now that I'd given her the money, what about the mortgage? Was I supposed to go begging again? To them I wasn't a mother. I was a walking, talking checkbook. Because of that $500 I missed the payment deadline. The bank called Eric directly. He phoned me right after, and the moment I picked up he exploded. "Mom, why hasn't the mortgage been paid yet? The bank just called me. Are you planning to just abandon us now?" He sounded like he'd swallowed a firecracker. Vanessa chimed in from the background, her voice shrill and cutting. "Anna, what are you trying to do? This could wreck our credit score." Then, as if it wasn't enough, she dragged my long-dead mother-in-law into it. Eric's grandma used to say a real mother puts her son first. "What you're doing now? It's just plain selfish." I was shaking so hard I could barely speak. "You know exactly where that $500 went. And you have the audacity to use the dead to guilt-trip me?" I'll get it covered soon," I rasped out, my voice barely a whisper. After hanging up, my hands were trembling so badly I couldn't even hold a cup of water. My heart clenched again, sharp, stabbing. I stared at the photo of Helen, my late mother-in-law, hanging on the wall, bitterness rising in my throat. I spent my life raising a son who turned out like this, and still he thinks I haven't sacrificed enough. To patch the hole I'd just torn in my finances, I swallowed my pride and went to see Frank Delaney, an old colleague from the hospital. He lived in one of those pre-war apartment buildings, all narrow stairwells and steep climbs. By the time I got to his floor I was nearly gasping for air. When I told him why I'd come, he paused. His expression flickered with something between pity and disbelief. He lent me the money anyway, but there was a strange tone in his voice. "Anna, your son's almost 40. Why are you still the one worrying about his mortgage? Don't you think it's time you lived for yourself?" His words slapped me across the face. I forced a smile. Yeah, this was just an unexpected bump. It won't happen again. But inside I was bleeding. Would it really not happen again? When would it ever end? The sunlight outside Frank's house was so harsh I could barely keep my eyes open. Across the street, neighbors stood chatting in pairs and trios, their voices low, but I could feel their words like tiny knives. Didn't she retire? Why is she still borrowing money? She's old and still getting taken advantage of by her son? That's just sad. I felt like a walking joke. In the name of motherhood, I'd all but stripped myself bare. Even the last shred of dignity was wearing thin. Once I scraped together enough to cover the mortgage, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd get a few days of peace. A few days later, I made a fresh batch of orange marmalade and thought I'd drop it off at Eric's. The moment I stepped through the door, Vanessa rushed over, practically glowing. "Anna. Oh my gosh, we just saw the most amazing house." She was waving her phone like a baton, showing me pictures and layouts. "Top neighborhood, 5 minutes from Lakeview Elementary. Can you imagine Caleb growing up here? He'd be Ivy League bound for sure." Her eyes sparkled with ambition, not joy. The price tag on that house was enough to make your heart stop, and they didn't have a dime for the down payment. Then right on cue she turned to me with that familiar calculated charm. "Your old place is kinda small and outdated, Anna. Why not sell it to help us out with the down payment?" She smiled sweetly. "You could move in with us. You'd help with Caleb and we'd take care of you. Win-win-win." Eric chimed in like they'd rehearsed it. "Yeah, Mom, it's really for Caleb. You're always alone anyway." The chill I felt then wasn't from the air conditioner, it was from their words. That little house they were so eager to toss aside. It was the only home I'd ever made with my late husband. The one thing in my life that still felt untouched, mine. And now they wanted to uproot me, squeeze out the last of my value and call it care. Let's be honest. What they really wanted was a live-in babysitter they didn't have to pay. Vanessa shoved her phone closer, flipping through glossy real estate photos, gushing about the lighting, the open layout, the resale value. She wasn't even trying to hide the greed on her face. But I wasn't looking at the house, I was picturing my own. The curtains I'd sewn by hand. The rug I bought on clearance and vacuumed every Sunday. The creaky wooden chair I refused to throw out because it still held the shape of my husband's back. To them it was all just square footage and equity. I didn't say yes. Not right away. And that didn't sit well. They started coming by more often, always just to chat, but the topic was always the same. One day they even brought a trunk full of groceries. Vanessa beamed, voice dripping with sugar. "Anna, let's have a nice family dinner tonight. We've got something important to discuss." I knew exactly what the important thing was. Same old pitch, sell the house. Over dinner they took turns like tag team wrestlers. One minute it was Caleb's future. The next it was guilt. "If you're not comfortable with this, we might not be able to bring Caleb over as often," Vanessa said with a shrug. Translation: agree or forget about seeing your grandson. I couldn't eat a single bite. My chest felt like it was full of wet cement. So I kept quiet. Vanessa leaned forward, smile glued to her face. "Anna, just think of it as doing this for Caleb, okay? He's your grandson. If you don't help now, he'll grow up resenting you." Eric jumped in, not even looking at me. "Come on, Mom. Stop being so stubborn. That old house of yours isn't worth much anymore. Let's get something newer. We could all live together, it'd be fun." This wasn't about family. This was a shakedown and they were using Caleb as leverage. Vanessa dropped a piece of chicken breast into my bowl like she cared, all the while spewing guilt like poison. Eric barely looked up, only nodding when Vanessa needed a backup singer. There was no warmth at that table, just strategy. The wine they poured me didn't taste like love. Tasted like control. The stress had been building for weeks and that night it finally broke me. The next day I was hit with a wave of pain so sharp it took my breath away. Emergency doctors diagnosed me with acute gastritis. I was severely dehydrated, vomiting, too weak to sit up. Lying in bed, dizzy and hollowed out, I managed to call Eric. He heard my frail voice and replied flatly, "I've got clients to meet this week. I'll have Vanessa check on you." The moment he hung up, something inside me cracked. Hours later, Vanessa appeared. The second she walked in, she wrinkled her nose. "Oh my God, what is that smell?" She tiptoed in wearing gloves, poured me a glass of water with the mechanical grace of a nurse, but the attitude of a home inspector. For a second I thought she might have had a change of heart. Then she sat at the edge of my bed, voice light as air. "Anna, let's be honest, you're not as strong as you used to be. Maybe it's time to start, making arrangements." She was all smiles, but her eyes kept drifting toward my desk drawer. I knew what she was looking for. The deed. And the old passbook. Then came the casual question, smooth as silk. "Oh, by the way, where do you keep that old savings account? Is the password still your birthday? You really shouldn't be handling this stuff all on your own." What if something happened? She trailed off, but I heard it loud and clear. Make a will. Sign it all over to us. I stared at her face, eager, expectant, and my heart went cold. She wasn't here to help. She was here to inventory the assets. My body felt heavier by the minute, but my soul had already gone numb. From the bed, I could hear her in the kitchen clinking dishes like she owned the place. The drawer was still open. The papers inside still rumpled from her fingers. She came back smiling. Said she had to leave, Caleb had art class. I nodded. Didn't stop her. Once she shut the door behind her, I pulled myself up and walked to the drawer. I placed every document back where it belonged, page by page. When I touched the deed, my hands trembled. The edges were slightly creased. She'd handled it. I stared at the line that said, Owner, Anna Mitchell. They weren't waiting for me to recover. They were waiting for me to lose all control. I didn't sleep a wink that night. The diarrhea wouldn't stop, and my stomach felt like it had been scraped raw with a wire brush. Even sitting up to sip water took everything I had. Alone, I dragged myself out of bed, slippers damp and flimsy, and knelt in the bathroom to clean up the mess on the floor. Cold water seeped from my wrists all the way to my chest. The house was so quiet it rang. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, each second a sharp reminder of how long the night had stretched. Vanessa never came back. Eric didn't call. I sat on the toilet, staring at the stain I hadn't managed to scrub clean, and my mind jumped to more than a decade ago, when my husband was hospitalized, bleeding out in the middle of the night. I'd knelt on that sterile floor, wiping up the blood with tissues, then hauled a half-full bucket to wash him up and change the sheets. I never thought it was too dirty, too tiring. I just did it. No. A bout of gastritis and I was suddenly a burden. A drain. How did I end up here? Just as the sky began to lighten, I finally sat down for a moment of rest. That's when the doorbell rang. It was Diane. She stood there holding a paper bag with breakfast, her brows furrowed the moment she saw me. Anna, you don't look right. She placed the bag on the kitchen counter and walked straight to where I was standing. I tugged at my collar, trying to hide the pallor in my face. It's nothing. I just ate something bad yesterday. She didn't say anything. 5 minutes later, she walked out of my bedroom holding a few papers. My prescriptions and insurance forms. She didn't pry. Just let out a sigh and said, "What have they done to push you this far?" I didn't respond. I took the papers from her hand and slid them into a drawer. She sat in the living room while I forced down a few bites of breakfast, her eyes quietly watching me. "I know you don't want to be harsh with them," she finally said, pulling a business card from her purse and placing it on the coffee table. "Her name's Melanie. She's a lawyer I trust, specializes in elder asset protection." I glanced down at the card. The text was neat, not a letter out of place. "I'm not trying to sue them," I said automatically. "No one said you had to," Diane replied calmly. "This is about keeping what's yours from being taken right out from under you." I said nothing. Because last night, while I was nearly passing out from pain, not one of them asked if I had meds or enough water. But they were quick to circle around my passwords and paperwork like vultures. I stared at the card for a long time. "Can this lawyer actually protect me?" I asked. "She can help you set up a trust," Diane said without hesitation. "Your house, your pension, they all go in. You decide who has access. You decide who doesn't. And if something ever happens to you, at least your dignity won't be the first thing to go." I nodded slowly, though I didn't say yes. That evening, Eric and Vanessa showed up. They brought flowers and a performance. Vanessa waltzed in with a bright smile. "Anna, are you feeling any better? This place could use some fresh air. Let me crack a window for you." She drifted into the kitchen, chatting as she moved. "Need help tidying up? Oh, and that pharmacy card I grabbed for you the other day, is it still over by the desk?" I heard her footsteps hovering near the drawer where I kept my documents. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. Eric slumped down onto the couch. "Hey Mom. Any chance you can still cover the mortgage this month? You mentioned not feeling well last time and, well, things are pretty tight for us." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I walked into the bedroom, came back with a folded insurance statement and handed it to him. I checked with Diane. "I have to pay out of pocket first. Things are a little complicated right now. You two might need to figure something else out." Vanessa reappeared from the study, face unreadable. They stayed a few more minutes, said they had to pick Caleb up from school, and left without eating anything. As soon as the door shut behind them, I walked over to the table. My folder had been moved. The deed, which I'd tucked at the very bottom, was now right on top. The cover of my insurance file had fresh creases in it. I stared at that stack of paper for a good 30 seconds. Then I turned, walked back to the sofa, and picked up my phone. "Diane," I said, my voice steady and low, "I want to meet that lawyer you mentioned. As soon as possible." Diane was waiting for me in the car. The morning sun was gentle and warm. I wrapped myself in a coat and pulled a hat low over my head, looking like someone heading to the grocery store. But we weren't driving to the store. We went downtown to an old office building with no flashy signage, just a small brass plaque by the door that read, "Melanie Cross, Elder Law and Estate Planning." She sat behind a tidy desk wearing thin-rimmed glasses, her expression calm. Not the aggressive, fast-talking kind of lawyer. More like someone soft-spoken, measured. "Ms. Anna, you're here because you want to protect your home, your assets, and your right to make decisions for yourself. Is that correct?" I nodded. My heart was racing. "Then we need to establish 3 things," she said. "First, a revocable trust. Everything you own will be moved into it. Second, a healthcare proxy so that in a medical emergency, decisions are made by someone you trust. And third, a disinheritance clause, clearly stating that your son and daughter-in-law will receive nothing from your estate." She said it plainly, and I heard every word. "Once this is signed," she added, "they won't be able to touch a single cent, even if one day you're unable to speak for yourself." I bit my lip and looked at Diane. She didn't try to convince me. She just gave a quiet nod. "I don't want to take them to court," I said. "You don't have to," Melanie replied, sliding a pen across the desk. "You just have to make sure they never get to hijack your life again." My hand trembled as I signed. But I didn't stop. The house, the retirement account, every bank account I could remember, I transferred it all into the trust. Only I knew the password to the new account. I designated Diane as the backup trustee. I asked Melanie to include a clause. Beneficiaries may not transfer or reassign inheritance shares unless personally amended in writing by the grantor. She nodded and said, "You're thinking clearly." As we were leaving, she handed me a copy of the documents. "This isn't to scare them," she said. "It's just a reminder. You're not leaving anything to chance." The moment I got home, I changed the locks. Found a locksmith who didn't waste time. 30 minutes, done. I gave the only spare key to Diane. Then I closed the old savings account and opened a new one online with dual passwords and fingerprint authentication. Disabled every automatic family transfer feature. I placed my prescriptions in a locked cabinet, tucked the key behind an old oil bottle in the kitchen corner. Once everything was in place, I made myself a cup of tea. Same old house, worn carpet, peeling paint, neatly stacked newspapers. But for the first time I knew it belonged to me and only me. Around dusk the doorbell rang. It was them. Eric stood holding Caleb, smiling, while Vanessa carried a pot of soup. "Anna, we were just getting off work nearby and thought we'd drop by," she said with that breezy tone, like nothing had ever happened. "I even made your favorite, chicken soup." I smiled and let them in. Offered them tea. Played the gracious host. Vanessa looked around, eyes gliding over the dining table, windowsill, desk. Finally settling on the drawer beside my couch. "Mom, let me tidy this up for you. So many letters piled up here," she chirped. Before she could take a step, I said cool and even, "No need. I just sorted it." Her smile faltered. "Oh right. I think I saw something earlier, something about a trust." I gave her a calm smile. "Yes. Just something I set up, nothing much. Just in case I suddenly go, I don't want to burden anyone." Eric set his teacup down, his expression changing. "Mom, what exactly do you mean?" "Nothing," I said softly. "Just making sure everything goes where it should. No room for confusion." Vanessa's composure cracked for a split second, but she recovered quickly. "Anna, don't be like that. We came here just to see you." I nodded. "Then sit a while. But don't touch my things." The air turned to stone. They stayed less than 10 minutes before Vanessa said Caleb was getting restless, and they left. I walked them to the door, watched them head down the stairs, and quietly closed it behind them. Then I returned to the kitchen, picked up my knife, and kept chopping vegetables while the evening news murmured from the old TV. Sunlight fell across the sink, and in that moment I knew I had finally done the right thing. Back at home, Vanessa exploded. She hurled Eric's coat onto the couch. "You just sat there sipping tea? She's already moved everything into a trust and you're still playing the dutiful son." Eric shut the door behind him, brow furrowed. "Can you not scream in the hallway? The neighbors can hear." Vanessa's eyes brimmed with rage. "Do you have any idea? I already spoke with a realtor. After a light renovation, her house could sell for over 400 grand. I even had the design plans drawn up. And now, just like that, a piece of paper and you're not even mentioned." Eric took off his coat and sank into the couch, speechless. It's not that he didn't care. It's that for the first time he realized, Mom wasn't just emotional. He meant it. She had cut them out. From beginning to end, she never raised her voice. She only said, "Don't touch my things." But he understood now. That was a boundary. And in all these years she had never drawn one before. The next day he came to my house alone. He didn't bring Vanessa. No call ahead. Just showed up. "Mom," he said, shifting uneasily at the door. "I want to talk." I opened the door and stepped aside to let him in. This time he was quiet. He sat on the edge of the couch, didn't rush into anything. After a long pause he finally spoke. "Lately I've been thinking about the past." I stayed silent and poured him a glass of warm water, setting it gently in front of him. "Do you remember when I had chickenpox as a kid? You stayed home with me for 2 weeks. Even called off your night shifts at the hospital. I still remember that vegetable soup you made." I nodded. "I remember." He gave a small, nervous smile. "I know Vanessa can come off harsh. That's just how she is. And I know I've made mistakes too. But we never meant to hurt you. We've just been under a lot of pressure." I sat down slowly and looked at him. My voice was steady. "Did you know that last time she visited she went through my things?" Eric's smile froze. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. "She thought I didn't notice," I went on. "But I saw her flipping through my property deed 3 times. She even studied the markings on the back of the folder." His head dropped, the water in his glass rippling slightly. I let out a quiet sigh. "Eric, when you had fevers as a kid, I stayed up all night swapping cold towels on your forehead. After you grew up, I've bailed you out more times than I can count. I can take being poor. I can take being tired. I can even take being unappreciated. But I will not sit back and smile while you all bleed me dry." He didn't say a word. "I've placed the house in a trust," I said. "You won't be inheriting a cent. After I'm gone, it'll be donated to the local women's shelter fund." There was no anger in my voice. No sadness either. Just clarity. A final kindness from a mother who had woken up. Eric stood up stiffly. "So this is revenge?" I stood too, meeting his eyes. "No. This is protection." He didn't respond. He walked out. The door didn't slam, but it still hit me right in the chest. 2 days later I got a call. It was a friend from church. Her voice was hushed. "Anna, I'm not sure if I should tell you this, but your daughter-in-law has been reaching out to some of our old friends. She's saying you haven't been doing well lately. That maybe your mental state's unstable. She hinted that the family might need to step in." I stayed quiet, listening. "She asked if you've been forgetting things. If you can still cook for yourself. If anyone's been checking in on you." I gripped the phone tighter. Cold shot straight to my spine. She'd made her move. Not through the will. Not with a lawyer. She was coming for my sanity. I ended the call and immediately dialed Melanie. "I need to add a clause," I said. "A guardianship exemption. And a legal trigger. If anyone spreads claims about my mental state, I want the right to sue." Melanie paused on the other end. Then she asked, "Have they started?" I answered, "They're already on their way." Then I made a second call, to Diane. "I need you to look into something for me. Vanessa's been reaching out to people. Church members, the preschool neighbors, whoever. I want every word they say to become evidence for my retaliation. I'm not waiting to be accused. They'll be the ones scrambling." Sunday mornings at church were always quiet. Leaning on my cane, I made my way into the community room behind the main sanctuary. It was the weekly women's group gathering. I hadn't shown up in years. But when they saw me, everyone lit up. One woman offered me her seat, another asked how I'd been feeling, and someone even handed me a cup of lemon tea just the way I liked it. I nodded and smiled, chatting easily. It wasn't until the conversation turned to property taxes that I casually dropped the line. Oh, that house. I'm donating it to the local women's shelter. Figured it's better to give women with nowhere else to go a roof over their heads than to leave it to anyone in particular. A few of them looked momentarily stunned, then smiled and nodded. Anna, you've always had vision, one said warmly. I added, just loud enough, the trust's already in place. Anyone thinking they can come claim it later? Too late. That got a round of laughter. I smiled too, but I knew exactly what I was doing. The news would reach Vanessa in 3 hours tops. Sure enough, not even an hour after I got home, Vanessa burst through my front door. What the hell are you doing, Anna? She shouted, slamming her hand on the table. Eric followed behind, pale as a ghost. Are you out of your mind? You're donating the whole house. I set down the knife I was using and calmly looked at them, smiling. Well, you've all been acting like I was dead anyway. Vanessa stomped her foot, furious. That's your son's inheritance. What about Caleb? What happens to him? I wiped my hands and said evenly, Caleb? The last time you took my retirement money, you told me it was for his fever medication. Meanwhile, he was bouncing on the neighbor's trampoline all afternoon. Eric's face turned stone cold. You're being unfair, Mom. Unfair. I snapped, tossing a copy of the property deed onto the table. Did you think about fairness when you were sneaking into my drawer to steal documents? Vanessa lunged for the paper, but Diane stepped out of the hallway holding up her phone. I recorded everything, she said calmly. Don't worry. Every word you just said can be played back in court. Eric froze. I walked over, standing between them. My voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut glass. From this moment forward, you're not welcome in my home. I've changed the locks. The trust is now irrevocable. You won't get your hands on this house. Vanessa went pale. You're not afraid we'll sue you? I gave a cold laugh. Go ahead. I'd love to bring the unpaid loan records, the surveillance footage of you rifling through my drawers, and this audio recording into court. Let's see who should be scared. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Eric kept his eyes on the floor. I shoved them out the front door and shut it hard behind them. They were still yelling outside. I turned the lock. Back in the kitchen, the soup was still simmering. I picked up the knife, swept the chopped vegetables into the pot, and stirred like nothing had happened. But I knew, this time they were truly out of options. Vanessa didn't knock again. But on the third night the phone rang. It was Eric. Mom, can we talk? His voice was soft, his tone cautious, as if I might hang up at any second. I didn't say anything, just listened. Caleb's been asking about you, he said. He doesn't understand why you don't call, why you're not picking him up anymore. I told him you were busy. But really, we were just too aggressive. Vanessa's hot-headed, but she's not a bad person. Mom, he's just a kid. He's innocent. As he spoke, I silently synced the call to Diane through my Bluetooth recorder. When he finished, I gave him only one response. You remember what you said in my house that day? I recorded it. There was a pause. I know. I'm not trying to threaten you. I wonder if there's any way we can. There isn't. I cut him off. Face it, Eric. And I hung up. The next morning, my attorney Melanie mailed a formal cease and desist letter, addressed to both Eric and Vanessa. The subject line: Notice of legal action regarding ongoing attempt to control senior's estate. The body outlined specific incidents, audio summaries, document copies. It declared the full revocation of their medical power of attorney and emergency contact rights. It warned of immediate legal consequences for any future interference or defamation. At the next church gathering, I spoke publicly about it for the first time. I didn't name names. I just said I'd place my house into an irrevocable trust because I was tired of being treated like a walking ATM while I was still alive. Some applauded. Others were quiet. A few scooted their chairs closer and whispered, I'm going through the same thing. They started calling me the brave one. The woman who stood her ground. I wasn't looking to be admired. I just had enough. That Friday I went to Caleb's school myself and sat down with the dean. I'm no longer his emergency contact, I said. I won't be paying tuition, medical bills, or anything else. He has parents. It's their turn to step up. The dean looked surprised but nodded in the end. Thank you for being clear. As I walked out of the school, I saw Vanessa in the parking lot. She looked pale, clutching her phone, staring at me blankly. She opened her mouth. Anna. I stopped 2 steps away, stared her in the eyes. Goodbye, Vanessa. She tried to speak, but I didn't wait. I walked away without looking back. That evening I came home. There were 2 notices taped to my front door. One was the official confirmation of my property donation to the Women's Center. The other was a summary of the trust amendment written in my own hand. The house would be renamed Helen Place, after I pass, a shelter for women in need. I chose the name deliberately. Helen was my mother-in-law. They used her memory for years to guilt-trip me. Now her name would live on where they'd never be allowed to step foot. A few days later, one of the neighbors told me Eric had been quietly reassigned at work. The new HR director, apparently the younger sister of one of his college classmates, had heard the story about how he tried to pressure his elderly mother into signing over her house. He no longer handled the same client accounts. Vanessa too had been edged out at church. A few women pulled me aside, whispering, "She used to say you were mentally unstable. But now everyone knows, you're the clearest-headed person here." A week after that I moved out of the old house. On moving day I didn't cry. I didn't look back. Diane helped me pack up the photo albums, took down the old calendar board from the fridge, and picked the last rose from the garden. The new place wasn't big, just a modest 1-bedroom apartment arranged by the Women's Center. But it was filled with sunlight. There was a wicker chair by the window. I sat there with a cup of tea watching the neighborhood kids race their bikes in the breeze. This time I wasn't waiting for anyone to knock on the door. Because now I knew. That door only opens for me.